On to your next quarterback in the first round of Josh Edwards' mock draft, the first mock draft of the 2024 campaign and With the First Pick podcast. Down to number 4. Man, I'm halfway through rewatching that Bears game on offense.
Ugly.
Sweet mercy alive. I mean, there is some stuff going on that doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't know if it matters who the quarterback is. In a lot of regards, Justin Fields saves that offense because of his legs. And the player you have, the Bears taking here at number 4. Again, this is reverse Super Bowl odds, so don't get angry at Josh for having your team up there. Drake Maye. So now Drake Maye is an example of a quarterback who's been up and down, new offense, getting used to new players. One of his best receivers, the NCAA refuses to allow him to play for reasons that remain idiotic, if we're being honest, but whatever. We have to talk about Drake Maye working with what he has. So, Josh, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on Drake Maye, who I liked him over the summer? I didn't love him as much as I wanted to.
Yeah, what I wanted to see from him this year was just improved decision-making, which is not borne out in his statistics, the touchdown to interception ratio, but he had a lot of what I call prayer balls, which is I'm going to chuck it up and hope my guy comes down with it last season. So I wanted to see him kind of weed that out of the game. And he has to this point. I mean, he's a big quarterback. He's got a strong arm, capable of making all the throws on the field. So I'm encouraged with what I've seen from him so far this year and the development that he's taking. And that's why he's the number 2 quarterback in this class for me right now. As to why he's going to the Bears, I don't know how much blame I'm going to put on Justin Fields right now, but it's clear that there's a disconnect between the coaching staff and the player at this point in time. They were not the ones that drafted Justin Fields. So after the consideration of possibly sticking at number 1 last year and taking a quarterback, now we have a little bit more clarity if this does not come together by the end of the year to the point where maybe they do consider moving on from Fields and taking a quarterback there atop this draft.
So
it's
Rick,
not referred to as prayer ball. It's referred to as that dude I'm throwing to makes about $30 million a year. I expect him to make those plays, and it's my job as a quarterback to put the ball in a situation where at least he can go up and make plays. That's what I look at it as.
All right. Well, I'll say a prayer for you, Rick. How about that? So two questions for you, Rick. You didn't have this really. This wasn't a concern for you at Minnesota because you were there for so long, but I'm sure you saw around the league when new coach, new front office come in, old quarterback, even if he's only in year 3, it might be on the way out. And then number 2, we haven't really talked about Drake Maye yet, but what have been your impressions, just maybe TV scouting of Drake Maye, who hasn't been lights out?
I've watched Drake Maye. And
you've watched him this year?
Yeah, I watched them in the first game.
The South Carolina game we did talk about. Last week, they went to overtime last week against Appalachian State.
And I watched that game, too.
Oh, look at you. Well, I apologize for selling you short. Okay, well, tell me then, what's going on with Drake Maye?
Well, I thought he played very good in the South Carolina game. He doesn't have the receivers or the weapons around him that he had last year with Green and the little slot receiver.
Josh Downs.
But he looked very comfortable. I thought he took a step forward in the South Carolina game. I was a little disappointed in this App State game. Now, it was raining. It looked like it was raining on the tape. Some of his balls were short, which means they kind of the receivers, especially on in routes, dig in routes, and some outside out routes were short where they had to dive low to try to get the ball. I didn't think he threw as well, whether it's App State, but with his caliber of talent, you go out there and dominate regardless if you're playing App State or you're playing Ohio State. So I think that he was a little disappointing. I didn't know if it was the weather. Is he still getting used to the new receivers? But he needs to get back on track here, especially when they start the ACC schedule.
This Saturday, they play Minnesota. So that'll be a test. Our guy Tyler Newman's a safety guy we're going to talk about on the podcast soon per viewer request. So we're excited about that. But Rick, let me just ask you the other question. If you're new administration coming in, you don't have ties to Justin Fields, even if it's not, as Josh points out, Justin Fields' fault. So is it reasonable to expect the Bears, who have 2 first-round picks?
Yeah, when you look at it, I think last week in week 1, the type of plays that are being called, he doesn't throw the ball downfield. He's supposed to have all these new offensive weapons around him, and I think he averaged right around 5 yards per play per pass down the field, but you're not going to win ball games like that. So they got this revamped offensive line. They got, DJ Moore, and he only had 2 targets or 2 catches last week. They traded for Claypool. So they need to open up that offense. And I agree, whether it's the play calling or is it Justin Fields. Now Justin Fields saves them with with his legs, but we have to know what he is as a thrower and if he has improved. But it's hard to tell when most of your attempts are at the line of scrimmage or less than 5 yards down the field.